additional settings that would be hidden from me if I just clicked on standard. So we want to make sure that we click all features. And now I can go ahead and name my campaign. So I'm going to call this Poppin'. I usually create an indicator of what country or what locations I'm targeting at the campaign name. So that's the way when I'm looking at my account, and we'll take a look at what a list of accounts looks shortly. But when I'm looking at my account, it's nice to be able to see some basic identifiers in my naming convention. So I'll create USA because we're only going to target the US. And like we said, this is going to be targeting the category furniture. So the campaign itself is targeting furniture, even though we're going to have additional ad groups targeting all the subsets and the subcategories of furniture like office desks, things like that. My overall campaign is going to be called furniture because that's the main category, that's the primary category that we're targeting with this campaign. So Poppin' USA Furniture, and we're going to continue down the list of settings that we configure at the campaign level. Now, you don't need to be super careful and you don't need to be super committal at this stage because all of these settings could be changed later. Once you launch the campaign, a month from now, a day from now, it doesn't matter. You can come back and edit all these settings. So don't be nervous or don't feel like you're committing to anything specific. Now, the next option we have is network. We have Google Search Network by default selected, and there's a little radio box here. There's a checkbox that asks us if we should include search partners. Now, what are search partners? Search partners is a very substantial network of websites and properties, for example, AOL.com, Google Maps, things like that, that Google has contracts with, and they share ad inventory. So if you leave this box checked, that means if somebody goes to AOL.com and they do a search on AOL for office desks, then our ad will be eligible to show. The question is, do you want to leave this box checked or not? And I would generally recommend to start off without it checked. That's because Google generally generates the highest quality traffic, and chances are, unless you're advertising extremely, extremely aggressively, most likely you're going to have enough inventory and enough search volume for your products and services available just on Google itself without having to include the search partners. And oftentimes, the search partners will take away valuable impressions and clicks that you would have otherwise received on Google itself. One of the times where it actually is very beneficial to leave the search partners checkbox checked is if you're advertising to a certain demographic that doesn't use Google as much as everybody else. We've had clients that the demographic were older people who were still using AOL as their primary search engine, and we found a lot better success advertising on the Google search partners as well. But for now, for Poppin', we're going to exclude the Google search partners. Devices. Ads will show on all eligible devices by default. We could come in later and I'm going to show you how you could modify your bids for different types of devices, for desktops, laptops, tablets, mobile phones. Here we have location settings. Now, you could do a lot of interesting things here. Because we're advertising for Poppin' and we decided that we're only going to be targeting the US, I'm just going to click United States. It's nice that Google gives me that default option. But for example, let's say we were targeting just Alabama and Singapore, right? Who knows why we would ever target just Alabama and Singapore? What type of business would be doing business in just Singapore and Alabama? But that's definitely possible. So we have the option to do that. So if we wanted to click and select some custom locations to target, we would choose the radio box, let me choose, and then I would start typing in the locations I want to target. So Alabama is going to come first. I'm going to start typing in Alabama, and right away I get that match. Alabama, United States. It indicates to me that it's a state, and I must have clicked it. It also gives me a reach. A reach is an approximate number of people in this targeting parameter. So by just targeting Alabama, I'm reaching an estimate of 4,710,000 people. I could also remove it and it resets me to scratch. Now let me add it again, Alabama. I'm going to click add. Now, once we're about to add Alabama, I could also target the entire United States, right? If I wanted to target the United States, except for Alabama, I could do that. So I typed in United States and I hit enter to target it. It's about 185 million people. And I could also search for Alabama and just exclude Alabama. So in my targeted locations, I'm targeting the entire US, but I've excluded Alabama. So my ads are eligible to show anywhere in the US except for Alabama. So I'm going to remove both of these, and because I want to target Alabama and I want to target Singapore, the country Singapore with an estimated reach of 3.7 million people, I'm going to hit enter again, and now I'm targeting both Singapore, the country, and Alabama, the state in the US. Now, selecting location options advanced gives me a few more nuanced and detailed targeting parameters. To target, we have three options: people in, searching for, or who show interest in my targeted location recommended. This is recommended by Google, but I don't recommend this, and we've seen this to be less successful on average in most accounts. This is a broader kind of situation, broader advertising method. The way this works is if I select Alabama, for example, and I'm targeting Alabama, Google's saying that if anybody shows interest in your location in the search, then you'll be eligible to see the ad. So for example, now this might not really happen, but there are a lot of permutations where it may happen. If someone's in Canada and I don't ship my products to Canada, but somebody types in used office, new office furniture in Alabama, then even though their computer, their IP address is showing Canada, their query has expressed interest in Alabama. They've expressed interest in one of my targeting parameters, even though they're not in a state, they're not in a country, or they're not in a location that I could service. Google, under this radio box over here, is still going to show my ad. My ad will still be eligible to show because they've shown interest in my targeted location. The best option to choose for the most precise type of targeting is people in my targeted location. So that means if you're in Canada, and even if you type in a whole long paragraph that expresses your deep love for Alabama, you're not going to see my ad because you're not in Alabama. You're not in Singapore. You're in Canada, and you are now excluded from being eligible to see the ad at all. You could also select people searching for or who show interest in my targeted location. So you're not really targeting these places themselves, but the person has to show interest in one of those places. So for example, if I'm targeting Alabama, they're only going to be eligible to see my ad if they search for something related to Alabama. There's very few businesses where this would come into play, where this would be a really effective way to target, because most times you'd lose too much search volume. But it's very possible. We've seen travel agencies use this very successfully. But for most cases, and specifically for Poppin, we're going to choose people in my targeted location. And we have the same thing for excluded locations. So we're going to want to select the radio box people in my excluded location, because we don't want to necessarily knock out somebody who is in Alabama, which I'm targeting, that might have shown interest, or Google might have picked up that they showed interest in another country or state, and they would then be excluded when I really want them to be included and be eligible to see my ad. So people in my excluded location is the best option to choose. So if I exclude any locations, then if you're there in that location, I don't want you to show the ad. I don't want you to see our ad. Now, let's talk about languages. So we've set our targeting parameters for our locations. We're targeting Singapore and Alabama. Now, let's just remove these because for the sake of continuity in this tutorial, I am advertising for Poppin, and we want to choose the entire United States. And I could twirl this back up over here to keep the screen a little cleaner. Languages. Languages is an interesting setting. What we want to do is target the types of people who converse and they browse the web in certain languages. Now, for example, this will come very handy if I'm targeting an international audience. So let's say I was targeting Paris, right? Let's say Poppin was selling to Paris, but their website's in English, and their ads are going to be written in English, and we don't want people who just speak French because they won't understand our ads, they won't understand the website, and it'll be a problem. It won't be worth the money. It won't be a profitable way to spend our advertising dollars. So what I would do over here is I would click English. Now, what this does is what it's supposed to do is, even if I'm advertising in